Hello everyone. This is just a short report that I want to do on the train derailment that happened a few weeks back in Ohio. I found a paper on the internet and it was from a conversation on Jeff Rentz's website and radio show. It was a conversation he had with Yoichi Shimatsu. He's a chemist, some kind of theorist, and he has some amazing theories about what really happened there with the train derailment. You can find the article at rents.com and other places. I'll post a link to it. There are some questions that are brought up, and there are some amazing answers. I will admit it's just speculation, but the article does give a lot of science and proof of what was happening. And I'll just ask some of the questions that it brings up. Is what was really on the train? And did they really have to burn the substance that leaked out of the cars, or was thought to be leaking out of the cars? Where had the train come from? And when you see the news about this, I don't remember them really saying exactly where the train had come from and where it was going. And also, was it a coincidence that Joe Biden went to Poland and Ukraine right at the time, just after that happened? Everybody was up in arms that he didn't go to East Palestine, Ohio, where it happened. And why did he have to go to Poland and Ukraine? Actually, he went secretly to Ukraine and Kiev. So without any further delay, I'll get right to the main claim of the article. And that is that the train that derailed was actually carrying none other than mustard gas. And it was coming from a major toxic waste facility in Madison, Illinois, and was being shipped to the East Coast through East Palestine, Ohio, and Conway, Pennsylvania, right across the state line, which is just about 70 miles or so from downtown Pittsburgh. And according to the article, it was being shipped to Aberdeen, Maryland, where it would then be shipped to none other than Ukraine, where the mustard gas would then be used in a false flag chemical attack on Poland and Ukraine to be blamed on Russia. And this would be to get general support for a war against Russia and Putin. I just thought that these claims are so important that I wanted to share the article and pass it on. One of the first claims it brings up is that the news media are falsely reporting that it was vinyl chloride that came out of the tankers in the crash, and that this vinyl chloride is highly toxic and harmful. And I noticed that in one of the television reports, they said vinyl chloride is also found in cigarette smoke. So if it's so highly toxic, why haven't we heard of that before from cigarette smoke? The article claims that vinyl chloride is not dangerous at all, but what was actually coming out of the tankers was a related substance called vinylidene chloride. And this can be turned into a substance called phosgene, which is known in none other than mustard gas, which is a known dangerous chemical banned in warfare. And this article even claims that even the EPA itself has admitted that phosgene and vinylidene chloride were detected coming out of the tankers, and this must have been in the smoke after they burned the chemicals. And you have to ask why they so hastily needed to burn these chemicals. Were they trying to cover up something? And I had heard that the tankers were not leaking, so they must have cooked up an excuse that there was an explosion risk and dangerous toxic leakage risk of these dangerous chemicals. And the article also asks why the train was headed to East Palestine, Ohio in the first place and on to Conway, Pennsylvania supposedly. Neither of these train facilities have major holding tanks for toxic chemicals. The chemicals, if they were so dangerous, should have been being shipped down to Madison, Illinois, which is just right outside of St. Louis, which does have a major toxic holding facility. This article also makes the assumption that the train was headed to Conway, Pennsylvania, because Norfolk Southern, which is the rail line that was transporting the chemical tankers, has a major hub there in Conway. And although this hub has no major holding facility for toxic chemicals, it is a major hub to the East Coast. So we can also assume that that's where the train was headed. So such a scheme as described in this article would most definitely have to be carried out at high levels: government, politics, military, But also to sabotage the train would take some higher level of coordination to pull off. And we know that false flag chemical attacks are right out of the standard playbook of wicked schemers. We know that Saddam Hussein and Iraq were taken out with false accusations of chemical warfare, and they tried to take out Assad with the same false claims. So you can see that they're going to want to try to take out Putin with the same false flag attacks. They can hurt a lot of people in the process and then just blame it on their enemy. And it's also very strange that Joe Biden went to Poland and secretly to Ukraine to meet President Zelensky. You have to wonder, did Biden have to go meet Zelensky in person? Was he telling Zelensky that this plot had failed? So I'll just add a few of my own thoughts on this, which the article also does raise up. And that is that what happened in Ohio may have actually been a good thing. It was actually stopping something far worse. And you have to wonder if higher-ups were involved in sabotaging the train. Why couldn't they have done it some other way? Why did there have to be so much damage? Well, maybe it's not that easy to do. I thought that maybe they could have switched the chemicals so that they wouldn't be harmful, but if they were being transported to Ukraine, they would have noticed at some point that the chemicals were not the same, and maybe this was the easiest way to stop it. And maybe they wanted people to wake up. Maybe this is what it takes for people to wake up. And I also have to ask, if God was involved, couldn't he have found some less harmful way to stop this? But maybe he also is trying to get us to wake up through all this. Maybe this is what it takes. But I just have to see that if this is true, it's actually uplifting, and it's good news in a way, and it's a bit inspiring, because we see that there is someone stopping all this crooked activity, this evil activity. And I'll just add that if this is what really happened, these plotters were forced to destroy the chemicals used to make mustard gas. They weren't destroyed in the wreck itself, so now they're going to have to look somewhere else for these chemicals. So I just wanted to read to you a few paragraphs directly from this article so you can get a better idea of what it's saying. The source of the cargo in Madison, Illinois was a shut-down uranium rod production facility of the infamous Dow Chemical Company of Agent Orange notoriety, more recently operating under the cover name of Spectralite. Since the mid-1900s, the radioactive site, located across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, has been under a quote-unquote cleanup toxic containment effort by the EPA, which has resisted designating the huge mess as a permanent hazardous waste dump. The chlorine-based compound inside the 5 suspect tanker cars was falsely described by the EPA and Norfolk Rail as vinyl chloride, a rather innocuous substance, in a cover-up of the actual content of highly volatile vinylidene chloride. The latter, a powerful oxidizing agent, also known as 1,1-dichloroethane, was used by Dow to clean uranium fuel rods at the Madison facility, where it has since been stored in steel holding tanks. The detection of phosgene in the black cloud of smoke over the East Palestine burn pit indicates the chemical content of the 5 mysterious tanker cars was not vinyl chloride as falsely claimed by Spectralite Dow, Norfolk Southern, and the EPA, but actually comprised the more volatile vinylidene dichloride, CH2CCl, a molecule containing carbon and 2 chlorine particles. The carbon element increases volatility, flammability during exposure to heat, as occurred due to the friction of toppled steel tankers sliding over gravel. The giveaway, leaving no doubts, was the mid-air detection of phosgene in the black cloud over the railside burn pit. Its formula is COCl2, translated as C for carbon, O oxygen, and Cl2 being 2 chlorine molecules. Its name is derived from Greek words for light and birth, and it was first synthesized by exposing carbon monoxide to strong sunlight, giving birth to a weird yellowish compound that smells like fresh mowed hay. The bizarre name of the Dow successor company, Spectralite, is inspired by the eerie yellowish glow of vinylidene chloride and phosgene when heated. On contact with humans and animals, it burns the eyes, ears, and nostrils, inflicting unbearable pain and horrific scars. The French deployed phosgene during trench warfare in World War I, resulting in the deaths of 85,000 German, English, American, and French soldiers. The Imperial Japanese Army used phosgene to decimate China's civilian population in the 1930s, to the dismay of the European powers. In these well-documented footsteps, Joe Biden and his sidekick Zelensky aim to use this banned toxin against Ukrainians, Western military volunteers, and Polish farmers to justify their madcap campaign to depose Putin. In this chemistry-based analysis, the findings on the ground suppressed under orders from higher-ups are examined for the most telling, incontrovertible evidence. The chemistry regarding the liquid cargo of the 5 suspect tanker cars, the contents of which were set afire under government orders in a hastily dug trench. Contrary to official denials and disinformation about their chemical content, the actual payload was disclosed by the EPA detection of phosgene in that black cloud over East Palestine. Phosgene was infamously used for chlorine warfare, also known as mustard gas, in France and Belgium during the First World War. Since it is not a byproduct of vinyl chloride, which contains only one chloride molecule, the actual precursor inside those tankers was a more dangerous chemical bonded with double the amount of chloride, just like phosgene. The questions hereby raised are, why were 5 tanker cars filled with a volatile chemical weapon precursor being transported toward the eastern seaboard? What was the final destination of this chemical payload? Was the chemical cargo to be deployed for military use during warfare in blatant violation of the international treaty banning chemical weapons? Which battle zone was targeted for the massive chemical warfare attack? The use of chemical weapons is a gross contravention of international law, a crime against humanity. The principal suspects in this genocide case are President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, CIA Chief William Burns, and their underlings, Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg, EPA Chief Michael Reagan, and other lackeys of the warmongering regime. The mainstream media disclaimers and those denials known as quote-unquote fact-checkers, also known as apologists for the intelligence agencies, politicians quote-unquote in the know, and the war industry have only added quote-unquote fuel to the flames of their own exposure and removal. Most of their hasty claims of factuality about the train wreck have proven to be exaggerated or plain wrong. To spare their own derrieres from the boot, the high-level political felons have been downplaying the near-apocalyptic risks of open-air disposal by toxic chemical burning at East Palestine, a township of 1,300 households without any political clout or sufficient financial resources to pursue their lawsuit to achieve justice. The actual chemical composition of that liquid cargo was misidentified in a criminal cover-up, obviously for reasons of a planned covert military and intelligence operation in blatant violation of International Chemical Weapons Treaty against the manufacture, storage, deployment, and use of lethal chemicals in warfare or domestic turmoil. There is sufficient evidence, even at this early stage, for those gas-targeted nations in a false flag operation, including Poland, Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, to initiate a case at the Hague War Crimes Tribunal against the Biden administration for planned crimes against humanity with scheduled deployment of a banned chemical weapon in a false flag operation. Given the political limitations on NATO alliance member states, which are forbidden to use or even deploy chemical weapons on a standby basis, the only possible reason for transporting that large amount of poison gas, approximately 17,000 gallons, in an eastward direction toward a military test range and on to an Atlantic port was to perpetrate a false flag operation against an enemy state or states, and in this particular case, against a quote-unquote victimized allied nation, Ukraine. Given the present morass in Eastern Europe, the last card in the CIA's deck is to fake a quote-unquote Russian chemical attack against Ukrainians, and more pointedly targeting Poland for the precise purpose of inciting the NATO alliance to declare all-out war against Russia and Belarus, thereby precipitating World War III. Obviously, NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg, a certifiable warmongering madman, was neck-deep in this idiotic plot. Tellingly, President Joe Biden has since made a secretive visit to Kiev 2 weeks after the East Palestine disaster, which seriously dented his surprise war plans, to confer with Volodymyr Zelensky, another conspirator who was visibly disappointed to hear, quote-unquote, the bad news of termination of the poison gas attacks. Biden rode the 10-hour train to Kiev to mourn the demise of NATO's clandestine plot to ride to Ukraine's rescue. Since no tears were shed for East Palestine, I won't be crying for war criminal Zelensky or his overlord Joe Biden. We can only be thankful to some hidden force that nobody was immediately killed in East Palestine, though the health threat will linger for many months and maybe years from now. So it looks like Joe Biden is a war criminal and his cronies, and they're going to have to go cry with Biden's goblin Jew sidekick Zelensky, who I like to call Holodomor Zelensky, because their plot failed, and they're going to have to go cook up another crooked plot. Hopefully they'll all be executed before they can do that. So until next time, bye for now.